All right, today we're making a Wordle game in Python. If you guys don't know, Wordle is a game where you have 6 chances to guess a 5 letter word, and feedback is given on each guess in the form of color coded tiles. I think everybody knows what Wordle is at this point, but we will do a quick demo just in case. So you can just Google Wordle, click on this right here. And I actually already played today, um, but you can see that I guess canoe, the yellow means these letters are in the word, but they're not in the right position. The gray means it's not in the word, so C, this isn't in the word. The green means we're in the right spot, and you can see as I guessed, came to need. So that's the word of the day, and pretty simple. So let's just get right into it. So open up whatever editor you're going to use. I'm using VS Code. Create a empty directory. I call mine Wordle, where you want to write your code. And we can see it's empty. Clear that away. And let's get going. So with Wordle, there's a bunch of 5 letter words we could use. So the first thing we need to do is download a text file with a ton of 5 letter words that could be the answers for the Wordle game. So I'm going to navigate to this link. I'll put it in the description. Change the screen. Okay. I'm going to paste this. This will be in the description, don't worry. But this is a text file with a bunch of potential Wordle words. So what you're going to do is when you go to this link, you're going to click on raw. You're going to copy this URL up here. You are going to navigate back to your editor. And you're going to do wget, and then paste the URL. Click enter. It'll do all that hoopla, clear the screen, and we can see we have this text file. So we can navigate into it. So it's thousands of 5 letter words. That could be the answers for our Wordle game. So what we're going to do next is, I don't like the name of this. It's kind of long. So we can rename it. So you're going to do move Wordle answers alphabetical, and we'll call it Wordle answers text. Cool. And so all of these words, we'll open that back up again. All of these words are potential Wordle answers, but they're not every single 5 letter word that exists. There's a lot of weird 5 letter words that Wordle won't use. It'll only use commonly used 5 letter words, if that makes sense. But we're going to want to get another text file that has basically every 5 letter word that exists. And the reason we want to get this is because we can check if the guess is legal, if it's technically a word. So it'll let the person guess it, because you can't guess just some random numbers that's not a word. It has to be a word. So we can check if the word is legit. But the actual words that Wordle uses is a smaller list. Anyways, there's another GitHub URL we will navigate to. This one will also go in the description. Paste that up top. And same type of deal. We're going to click on raw, copy this URL. You're going to go back to your editor, and you will do wget, paste that URL. So now we have the second text file. And I don't like the name of that one either, so we can call this one allowed words. Allowed words.txt. Cool. So now we have our 2 text files. This is the text file that'll be the randomly chosen Wordle answer, and these are basically every single 5 letter word. So now that we have that going, the first thing we'll do is create a main.py. So this is how we're going to run our game. So you're going to code main.py. We can close this text file. Don't save. I added a space there, I guess. Cool. So the first thing we're going to do is get the number of guesses. So Wordle defaults to 6 guesses, but we can have the user choose a different number of guesses. They can make the game harder by doing like 2 guesses, or make it easier by doing like 500 guesses, whatever they want to do. So we can do number of guesses. This can be input of number of guesses, and we can write default is, let's just do 6 because that's what the official Wordle game does. And then we can have the user enter that as input, and let's just run this to make sure it works as expected. So we can do Python main.py, number of guesses. Cool. So we can enter some input. So we can now create a helper.py function. And let's not have this in the main. Let's move this to helper.py. And we can define a function called get guesses, which will get the number of guesses the user wants. So we can do a while true. This will make sense in a moment. And we can paste this, number of guesses, and then we can do if not number of guesses. And so what this if not does is it checks for none or false or 0 or an empty string. So if the user just presses enter and doesn't enter a number, it'll be an empty string and this will be satisfied. If they enter a number like 7, 8, 2, whatever, this won't execute. So this is just checking if there's no input, and it'll be the default. And if that's true, we can set number of guesses equal to 6. That's the default. And we also need to check if this is an integer. If they enter some random jumble of numbers, like they try to spell something, or if they enter anything that's not an integer, we have to throw an error and have them enter more input, which is why we have this while loop. So we can do also if not, we cast number of guesses to a string, and then we do is digit. This is how you check if something is a digit, if a string is a digit, an integer, and we cast it to a string because if they do enter an integer up here, this won't work. You can't check if an integer is a digit. You have to cast it to a string. So if they enter something that's not a number, we have to print invalid input. Please enter a number. And then we want to go back to this top of this while loop. So we can also let's print a new line just to make things look a little more clear. And then we can do continue. And what continue will do is say, okay, go back to the top of the while loop and do this again. So it's going to say input number of guesses. So it'll just run this again. And if we do have a digit, so if we get the proper input, we're just going to return integer of number of guesses. And we cast this to an integer because this input will be a string. Cool. So this should work. So if we go back to main.py, we need to get rid of this. And we need to import the helper function. So import, or the function from the helper file. So we import helper, and then we're going to set number of guesses to helper dot, and we name this get guesses. Cool. So if we print number of guesses, just to make sure it works, and we can run main.py. Number of guesses, so if we just press enter, it should be 6. And we have traceback. I didn't spell that right. So we'll run that again. If we just press enter, no input, we have 6. And if we do some inputs, we do 2. There we go, 2 guesses. So that works. So a nice thing would be we hard code the 6 right here for the number of guesses, but we can make a configuration file so we can have a centralized place where we can change things like this, so we don't have to dig into the code and find that. So let's make a file called config.py. There we go. And in this file, we can do settings equals, we can have a dictionary, and we can have default guesses as a value. And we'll set that to 6. Cool. So if we go back to our helper function, we want to import the settings. So we are going to do from config, which is what that file is called, import settings, which is the dictionary of all the settings. And instead of hard coding the 6 right here, we can have an F string, and we will do default, and then we'll have settings of, what do we call it? Default guesses. We'll copy and paste this. Settings of default guesses. And so this will just, whenever we change this, it'll adapt and change this accordingly. And then we also want this again, so we have number of guesses equals settings of default guesses, and that should be it. So now, if we go into our configuration file and change this to 15, let's say, and we run main.py, now it'll be default 15, and if we do nothing, it'll be 15. Let's change it back to 6, just because that's what the official game does. Cool, so the guesses function is done, so we can get the number of guesses the user wants. What we need to do is get a random word from the Wordle answers text file, and this will be the answer for the game. So how we're going to do this is we'll also make this a helper function, and we'll call this get word. And we have to open the, what do we call that file again? We have to open the Wordle answers.txt file. So we're going to do with open, and then let's copy and paste this, Wordle answers.txt, and then we'll do in read mode, call it as file, and we'll make a variable called allowed words, and we want this to be a list of all the words in the text file. So how we do that is we'd be line dot strip for line in file dot read lines. And what this will do is it'll just make a, as I said, a list of all the possible words. And what we do next is we return a random word from that list. Oh my goodness, I can't spell. So random choice of words, and we're using random, so we have to import random. Okay, and now we can test this works, and I just saw an error, so we do random choice of, let's call this words, not allowed words. And then we can go in here and print get word, and it should print a random word from that text file. The rate of decoy, flask, refer, so all those look like pretty random words, and that works. So we can go head back to main, and we're going to want to call that function to get our answer. So this will be the answer to the game, and we'll do get word. Gotta do helper.getWord. Cool, so now we have the answer and the number of guesses. Alright, so the next thing we will do is we will create a while loop that will loop while the user still has guesses left. So we can do while number of guesses is greater than 0, and we'll have some logic in there, but at the end of that we're going to want to subtract 1 from number of guesses. So each time this loop runs, they'll have 1 less guess until it's 0 and they can't guess anymore. And so at the top, we can print a new line just to make things look a little cleaner. And the first thing we do is get a guess. So we're going to take input from the user, and we'll say guess, and they'll guess a word. And we want this to be all lowercase, because if we open our Wordle answers, all these are in lowercase. So make sure you do dot lower so the guess is lowercase, and we're going to want to check if the user already guessed the word, because how Wordle works is you can't guess the same word twice. So to do that, we can initialize a list called guessed words, just an empty list up here, and we can check down here if guess is already in guessed words. And then we want to print, oh, don't need to do that. We want to print some kind of error message. So we can print word already guessed. And then we're to want to continue. So that will just say, oh, word's already guessed. Go back to the top of this while loop. And then we want to, if that doesn't execute, that means the word hasn't been guessed yet, then we want to add it to the guess words list. So guess words and guess. Cool. That should work. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure the guess is legal. So if it's not a word that exists in the allowed words file, so we want to go back to our helper file, and then we can create a new function called check allowed. This will check if the words in the allowed words text file. So it's going to be the same logic as this. So we're going to open, except we don't need a random word. And instead of Wordle answers, it'll be allowed words.text. So we replace that with this. And then we will create a list, call it allowed words. And then we're actually going to want 2 parameters for this, or actually 1, just the guessed word. And we'll check if the guess is in this allowed words list. Because again, this is a list of all the words you can guess. And so if the user's guess isn't in this list, then they have to guess again. So if guess in allowed words, we can return true. And if that return statement doesn't execute, we return false. And then headed back to main.py, we can, let's get that out of here. So we can do if not, and from the helper file, check allowed guess. So what this is saying, if this is not true, so if it's false, and again, this is false when the guessed word isn't in allowed words, we are going to print an error message. So we can print not an allowed word, exclamation point, and then also continue on this, so we go back to the top of the while loop. So the next part of this would be, we want to compare the guessed word to the actual answer. So we can do if guess equals answer, that means the user won. We can print you win. So yeah, if the guess equals the answer, we print you win. That's all we'll do for now. We'll work on that more later. And if not, we want to create a new function that'll print the guess word and have it color coded like in Wordle. So we have like the yellow if the letter is in the word but it's not in the right position. We have the green if the letter is in the word in the right spot, and we have the gray if it's just not in the word. So we head back to our helper file, and we're gonna make a new function that is gonna print the result of the guess. So we can call this print guess result, and we want the inputs as guess and the actual answer. And we can set an empty string as the result, and we are going to want to loop through the guess. So I in range length of guess. And so we need to have a way to color the letters so they can output as a color in our terminal. And to do this, we're going to use this thing called term color. So from term color import. So what this is if we go back to our browser. Okay, so heading to here, this is term color. And so this is what lets us color things in our terminal. And I'll put this link in the description. So we are going to want to copy this right here to download term color, and heading back to VS Code, paste that. I already have it, but if you don't, it'll download. And now we can use term color. So with this import right here, We can loop through each letter and guess, and we do if guess of I, which is that letter, equals answer of I. So this will mean that we're checking for green. So if this letter equals this letter, so it's in the same spot as guess and an answer, it's a green letter. So we can add to result, and we can use colored. This is how you color the letter. We do guess, and then we'll color this. Let's do green. That's what Wordle does. And then the next thing we'll do, we can do elif guess is in the answer. So what this means is, so this will work if it's in the answer in the right spot, and if it's not in the right spot but it's in the answer, it's going to be yellow. So we can do if it's in answer, and then we'll do the same kind of thing as here, but we'll do yellow. Cool. And then we can do an else, and this would mean it is a gray letter. So we can do copy this, and we will do light gray. And then at the end of this, we return the result. And heading back to main, we will use that helper function. So we can do print helper.print guess result, and then that takes the parameters. So we do guess answer. Now we can run main. Let's see what happens. Looks like I did something wrong. Oh, new line. That is not a new line. Cool. So now we can run main. Number of guesses, we'll use the default, and we'll do canoe. Cool. So we can see that we have E, which is in the right spot, and N. So N is in the word, but it's not in the right spot. So we'll do, honestly, let's just print the answer so we can see what we're working with. So we'll restart this. Clear the screen again. So number of guesses, we'll go with the default space. So we'll guess canoe at first. Cool, it says C is in the word, which it is, not in the right spot. A is in the word, which it is, not in the right spot. And E is in the right spot. So we can guess space. Cool. So the game works, but it isn't working exactly correctly. And an example of this would be, we can hard code our answer to be something like, I don't know, we can do vigor. And so if we play this and we guess rigor, what should happen is this R should be green, and because there's only one R in vigor, this one should be gray. But if we run it, this R is yellow. So we want it to be, if we have all the greens of one letter, if there's any more of that letter, it should be gray, not yellow, because yellow implies that it's in the word in another spot, and it's not. So we will have to change the logic of the print guess result in this function right here. Okay, so how we're going to do this is back in helper.py, we're going to check the number of occurrences of green for each letter in the guess. And this is how we'll say, hey, this shouldn't be yellow, it should be gray, or hey, this can be yellow. So below result, we'll make a dictionary called matched, and set it to be empty, and then we will loop through each letter in the guess, range length guess, and then we'll check. So we'll check if the letter in guess is equal to the letter in the answer. And if that is true, we will check if it exists in the dictionary. And if it does, we increment it by 1, matched guess of I, plus equals 1, and then else, which means it doesn't exist yet, we can do matched of guess of I equals 1. And then, so this elif right here is what we want to focus on. So this is saying, okay, this means the letter should be yellow. So what we'll do is, first we'll check if the letter is in matched. So guess of I in matched. And so then we check if there are less green letters in guess than that letter in the answer, the letter is yellow. So we can do if matched of guess of I less than answer dot count of guess of I. And this is saying, okay, so we have a certain number of green letters in the guess that are correct, but if there's more of that same letter in the answer, then it can be yellow. Hopefully that makes sense. So then we do result plus equals, then we use colored. Actually, we can just copy this right down here. And else, so if this isn't true, that means we have gotten all the locations of that letter. So they're all greens. So we gray it out. So we do else, and then we can copy and paste this. But instead of yellow, we want to do light gray. Okay, and then so if this if statement doesn't get executed, which means there's no, that letter hasn't been matched yet, it's going to be yellow. So we'll do else, and then add yellow. And so this should work for us. So if we try, let's see, yeah, hard-coded to vigor, okay. So if we guess rigor, it should be grayed out. Cool, and that works. So the last thing is, so when we were playing the game, we can guess like canoe, and then space, and then, I don't know, boats. So our words aren't really stacked on top of each other, and like if we have 15 guesses, we'll have to scroll up and see what our past guesses were, and this isn't ideal. So we can print them all on top of each other to get a better picture of our previous guesses and what we should guess in the future. So how we can do this is in main.py, you're going to want to create a new list. We'll call it guessed words colored. That'll be just a empty list. Cool. And then our helper function at the bottom here, we can append the result to guess words colored. So append result, and that also means we have to pass that as an argument up here. And that means in main we'll also have to pass that. So guess words. So we pass it in main, and then so yeah, we append the new colored word to the list right here, and then we want to print those after each guess. So we can go to the top of our print guess result function. We can do for word in guess words colored, and we want to print that word. And let's see if that works. So we can do default canoe space rigor vigor. Cool. So now they're all printed one after the other like that. And that is about it. Our Wordle game should be done. Actually, there's one more thing we can do. So we have that configuration.py, and so say you want to do another color besides green or yellow or light gray. So we can go in our config.py and we can add some new items like letter if it's correct. So what should normally be green, and we'll set it to green at the moment. And then we can do the one for yellow. So if the letter is in the word, we'll print yellow. And then the last one could be for the gray. So letter incorrect. We'll do light gray. Can't spell. Cool. And then we'll have to update those accordingly. So we can, do we have settings imported? Yeah, settings. So instead of yellow, we'll do settings of, let's just go copy that, letter in word, paste that here. It didn't do that right. There we go. Instead of light gray right here, we're going to copy and paste this. instead of yellow again, we'll copy and paste this one. Then also for gray, we'll copy and paste this one. And then we forgot to do green up here, so we'll do letter correct. So let's test if that works. So we'll do new. Okay, got nothing, space. Okay, so yellow and green, cool, it works. So if we go back into it, instead of green, if we wanted blue, we can just do blue. Instead of yellow, if we wanted, oh, I don't know, red, we can do that. And let's test if that works. So, sure. Cool, so we got blue and red right there. So you can change the color pretty easily in that configuration file. And our game should be about done.